I never had the pleasure of meeting Anne, so tell me a little bit about her.
Anne was a remarkable person, and those who did have the pleasure of meeting her never forgot her. She was a truly memorable person. First, visually, she was very large, although she was a very finicky eater, but she had several children and some miscarriages, and so she put on a lot of weight that she never really took off. So she was short, she was stout, she was very short-sighted, so she wore these thick glasses and peered at me through the thick glasses. And she had a girlish voice, a high, girlish voice, even though she thought of herself as a prairie poet and was very proud to live in Saskatchewan and loved the prairies. She also never lost the English accent that she had in her girlhood and youth. So the combination of this high, girlish voice and this short, stout woman made a great impression on people, and she was as far away from the sort of stuffy, stultified image of a poet that you could possibly imagine.
You even say in the afterword that you're not even sure that she'd approve of some of the choices that you've made.
Yeah, although that is less on an aesthetic level, if you like, and more on a personal level. After her husband, Jan Szumigalski, died, she wrote 2 or 3 poems about their marriage and about him, including the title poem, When Earth Leaps Up, which I think is addressed to Jan after he died. And those were poems that she chose not to send out to magazines. One of them talks quite explicitly about the difficulties in their marriage, that he would be very silent, and she found it hard to cope with his silences. You know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, but in this case even more so. So was I right to publish that poem? I don't know. I would say in my defense, if you like, that she gave it to the University of Regina archives. It wasn't anything she wrote and destroyed. It wasn't anything that she wrote on it not ever to be published. She gave it to the archives. It was there with other materials in the archives, so I felt I was free to publish it. When earth leaps up and heaven descends, and the two meet like lovers, then the question is, could these flowers be stars? And is dust nothing more than the handful I sprinkled on your face as you went down into the dirt? By now I suppose you've crumbled, and your best jacket eaten by creatures smaller than sand grains, by creatures so tiny that sand grains are their planets, this fistful of earth, their universe. They hold hands like children, circling and singing in a playground. You hear them, and your elegant bones turn in the box, and as you clap, the carpals of your wrists fall away from each other. How simple the words to their song, all about blossoming stars. You can join in if you want to. Here above ground, all I have left is the question.
You picked a poem. I'll let you read it first, and then we'll talk about it.
This is a prose poem by Jan Szumigalski called A Child and His Mother Camp Out on a Cool Night. The child putting his hands together thinks his prayer is like a pancake his mother has baked for him. She poured batter on a hot stone, and when the edges curled, she folded it and placed it between his fingers. And the pancake is a flower folded at sunset, and the flower is a nest hidden in a tree, and the nest hung there in the sky is a dark star. If you want light, his mother tells him, you must pray for it. Shine this flashlight to your ear, and it will brighten the inside of your skull. You'll see light through to the forests of the mind, where birds sleep all night in their nests in the trees, and stars hang down from the branches like icicles. The Child and His Mother Camp Out on a Cool Night is all about transformation. It's about pancakes turning into flowers and flowers turning into stars, and the forests being both outside in the world and inside in the mind. And I think maybe this is true for a lot of writing, but I think it's especially true for Anne in her last years, as she was over 70 and knew she wouldn't be around that much longer, that she was concerned more and more with transformations, with metamorphosis, with change. To use the standard image, she was not a religious poet, but she was a spiritual poet, and there's a kind of spirituality, I think, in a lot of these last poems, whereby an image is very concrete, very visual, very tactile, and yet at the same time it stands for something else, because what Anne became aware of in these last years is how everything changes, including herself.
When you think of her, what do you think of?
I think of going round to her little house, and she filled the house with plants and and she had a little garden out the back that she was devoted to, and the house was full of books, of course. And when I was a teenager, I belonged to a group of writers who used to meet, not always in that house, but very often in Anne's house, and we'd drink homemade wine and read each other's poems. That was where I discovered the joy of language, and that was where I discovered, I think, more about the art of writing than in all the university classes I ever took. And I spent 7 years at university, mostly studying literature. But I learned more in Anne Szumigalski's kitchen and little front room about what writing means and how to write than I did in all those classes where I was carrying on about metaphors and allusions and synecdoche and all that stuff. No, for Anne it was the quality of imagining, and it was how to make an idea come alive in a reader's mind, and it was how to connect between people. That was what she cared about the most.
Well, thank you very much for sharing her.
It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
The book is When Earth Leaps Up, the last poetry collection of the late Anne Szumigalski, and When Earth Leaps Up, published by Brick Books, edited and described for us by Mark Abley.